Whenever I'm asked to speak in front of a group of people that have heard me speak before, I'm reminded about a story about Lyndon Johnson that was what was printed in a book called Path to Power. And when Johnson was running for his second term as a U.S. Senator from Texas, before there was mass media, how they used to campaign is they'd go from town to town. Well, Lyndon Johnson blew into this town in West Texas one Friday morning, and there was literally no one around. The bank was closed, the cafe was closed, the barber shop, there was nobody on the street. And as he drove up Main Street, he got to the city square, which was just packed with people. Well, in those days, they had public executions, and they had a scaffold in the public square, and they were getting ready to hang this guy. So Johnson, never one to miss the opportunity to talk to a crowd, actually walked up on the scaffold. And he says to the sheriff standing there, he says, I'm Lyndon Johnson, the United States Senator, and I'd like to address these people. And the sheriff looked at the deputy and the preacher, and he looked at the prisoner, and he said to Johnson, he says, well, this is kind of the prisoner's day. He says, you're going to have to ask him what he thinks. And the prisoner says, Sheriff, let's go ahead and get this over with. I've heard this guy speak before. And that's a true story. So if I see anybody in the back making a noose, I'll know it's time for me to leave, right? When I was 17 years old, I went down to the local recruiter in the small northwestern Montana town that I grew up in. I signed the paper of enlistment. 2 weeks out of high school, I was in sunny San Diego, and I met a charming chap by the name of Gunnery Sergeant Doffenbach, United States Marine Corps. And of all the disgusting, demeaning things that Doffenbach said to us, two things stick in my mind like it was yesterday. The first thing he said was, my name is Gunnery Sergeant Doffenbach. I am your senior drill instructor, and you will not like me. And that worked out to be extraordinarily true. But the second thing he said was, he says, it is not your job to die for your country. It's your job to make sure your enemy dies for his. And it's my job to give you the tools to not just survive in combat, but to win. Because we are about winning. We are not just about surviving. And you see, I think that resonates with me so much because I really think that's what we are as entrepreneurs, is we're not just here to get by, to survive and hope it works out. We're here to thrive. We're here to win. He went on to say, as your drill instructor, it's my job to give you those tools, and what I'm saying to you is I want to give you the tools that you need to make your business do better. No pie in the sky, ivory tower opinions, but things that you can use to grow your company and to actually win. Because I have seen, working with so many companies, and we call this time we have together this morning, how to get prospects to call you when they're ready to buy. And that's cute. But what I want to introduce you to is a philosophy and a way of thinking where you can actually win, you can own your territory, and you can control your market. Because I have found in the years that I've been working with companies, with notable exceptions, that almost every sales and marketing effort and those disciplines are completely out of control. They're disconnected, they're totally doing their own thing, they're off doing whatever they do. And as a result of that, what's happened is that there's a disconnect and a rift between sales and marketing. And I never really understood the difference between sales and marketing, but the analogy that really helped me is that marketing rather, is like planting a garden in the springtime. You kill the bugs, you plant the seeds, you till the soil, and over a period of time, you nurture that, and it grows into a crop. That's marketing. Sales is about harvesting. But so many times, we throw a bunch of seeds in the ground, and because there is no process to nurture that crop, somebody else ends up harvesting it. Or there's no process in place for harvesting. So what I'm suggesting is for companies to be as successful as they can be, whether you're an independent practitioner or you have a lot of employees, there still needs to be alignment between sales and marketing. And that is what we call nurture marketing. being there and being there and being there, because the trick to getting prospects to call you when they're ready to buy is for you to have begun that relationship a long time ago. That's what nurture marketing means. I said the last time I spoke to this group that I think that selling has never been tougher and buying has never been easier. And it's really true. Every person that I talk to that's either managing a sales effort or an entrepreneur tells me several things. First of all, sales cycles are getting longer. I hear sales managers complain all the time that there's people on the forecast that have been there and they don't ever seem to close. Sales cycles are getting longer. There are more and more people involved in decision-making processes, and the customers are better informed than they've ever been. And I call somebody on the phone and sometimes I hear click, click, click. They're Googling me while I'm talking to them. That's just the way it is. So what we want to make certain that we're doing is we're causing an alignment between these two efforts. And here's why this happens. First of all, you have marketing. And marketing looks as their discipline as to create opportunities. So they create ads, they create brochures, they create websites, they do all the things that they need to do to get the message out into the market. And if you do that consistently, pretty soon somebody's going to raise their hand. So marketing says, oh, this is great, this is a hot lead, and they hand it off to sales. Sales, if they call them, has this impression in their mind that this is not going to be a good lead anyway, so if I call them, they're not going to be ready. Because here's what happens, guys. CSO Insights tells us that 73% of the time, when a customer contacts you, in other words, they initiated contact, this is not somebody you call, 73% of the time, they are not sales ready. They may be kicking tires, they may be doing their due diligence, they may be even trying to better deal an existing vendor. You don't know. But that doesn't necessarily mean, because they raise their hand and express interest, that they are sales ready. And so what happens to the salesperson who gets that lead? Marketing goes, yay, somebody responded, hands it over to sales. Sales calls them and it's a dead lead, or at least 73% of the time, 3/4 of the time. So the impression that builds in sales is all I get is crappy leads from marketing. And because they don't have a process to stay engaged with that prospect, they just kind of drop off the end. I cannot tell you how many times in my past lives as a sales manager I've fired salespeople, and I open up their bottom desk drawer and there's a stack of leads and they're this tall. What happened? All kinds of money got spent to generate that interest. It went away. And what that happens is, because when I, as a sales manager, slide a lead across a desk to a sales rep, there is a line that I used to call the babysitting line. I slide the lead over, and then I have to turn it into a babysitter. Did you call them? Do they have any money? They have a budget? Do they have any need? Where are we? My thinking on this process is, if we are ever going to overcome this rift between sales and marketing, that we have to build an understanding between both sales and marketing that 3/4 of the time, just because somebody raised their hand, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be ready to pull the trigger. And so we have to have processes in place to systematically, consistently, and persistently stay engaged with those prospects over a long enough period of time that when they do have a need for what you do, that they think of you rather than the last person that went in the door. Pardon me. Here's the thing. Marketing leads get lost. And they do. I mean, how many times have you seen it? Somebody, oh God, that guy called me 6 months ago, what happened? Or you have a meeting with a referral source, and there's some connection there. And 6 months later, nobody even knows that they had the lunch. Because there is no ongoing connection, and if there's one thing that I've learned in an information age is that if you don't stay connected, opportunities go away. The onus upon us is to stay connected. You have to. And you have to figure out multiple ways to do that. And we're going to talk about that. Here's the other thing. What happens in sales, you've all seen, Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross. Everybody wants the hot leads. But when you understand that hot leads are a very small, hot leads defined as somebody ready to buy, is a small percentage of those people that respond, it sets a different expectation and a different mentality. And it engages both sales and marketing in this effort called new business development. By the way, I want to encourage you, if you have questions as we go through, feel free to interrupt me because I really would like to know if you have questions before we get to the end. And so the question, almost every manager that I've ever worked for in my life, and they've been legion, has said some version of the same thing. Plan your work and work your plan. Second level question, guys, what's the plan? Wander around out in the territory hoping to find somebody that's ready to buy. Hope against hope that a bluebird flies in the window or I call somebody just at the right time is not a strategy. It's not a plan. It's a reaction. And the problem is sometimes it works. But you can't build a business on sometimes it works. You got to have a better strategy. You have to know what you do next. You have to have a plan. Because here's what it really looks like in a lot of companies. You have salespeople out in the territory, they're giving presentations, they're closing business, they're trying to handle business, they're trying to get referrals, they're trying to do the follow-up, they're trying to fill a pipeline, marketing's trying to help, and there is no cohesive pulling the wagon in the same direction. It's all, everything looks together like it's put together with spare parts. And I'm not just talking about one-man shop entrepreneurs, I'm talking about major companies that you know and respect that run exactly this way. There is no strategy. There is no overarching plan for how do we go to market, how do we nurture, and how do we close business. And as a result of that, what happens is you get this mishmash of effort and mishmash of results. So what I'm going to talk about today, getting back to the real world strategies that you can take back to your business, is I'm going to give you an overview of what a formal, structured marketing plan looks like. And a formal marketing strategy, a real strategy, not a bunch of tactics, is the answer to 5 questions. First question, what's the territory? Now, territory can be one of 3 things. It can be either geography. I want Fred to call on zip code 63122, or the state of Iowa. I want Larry calling on these 4 states. I want you, so it can be geographic. Or it can be vertical markets. I want you calling on banks, I want you calling on manufacturers, I want you calling on stockbrokers. It can be that. Or it can be assigned accounts. I want you calling on Budweiser, I want you calling. It can be any of those 3 things. But you would be stunned at how many times sophisticated business people and sophisticated salespeople will get on an airplane and fly to Boston, and the guy across the street doesn't know what they do. It's amazing. So what first step has to be is a strategy to define what is the territory into which I sell. What are those markets that I can address specifically so that I don't have to get on an airplane when there's people across the street that don't know who I am. Market and territory is really an important effort to know. Now, here's the thing. Once you have defined your territory, and let's say as an example that your territory is the Midwest. You've defined that. You know exactly, and the strategy is of how to cover that. Now, the thing that you're going to find is that within that strategy, which is the second, or within that territory, which is the second element to this, is who are the prospects that fit the profile of someone that you can profitably do business with and will enjoy working with. My co-presenter today, and I'm really excited to hear this because Dale is an expert on telling you who that specific prospect that you should be dealing with really is. Because I always thought it was a simple matter of demographics. You could wake me up out of a cold sleep at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I could tell you that my target company is a company that has selling business to business, that has a direct sales organization between $3 and $50 million in annual revenue within the territory of the Midwest primarily. But I was missing a whole bunch. And Dale's going to spend some time telling us on how, and I think that we can learn a whole lot from understanding. But what's important is once you define the territory and you define that prospect, you get a much clearer picture of who and what you're selling and to whom you're selling. And there is a tremendous amount of clarity that comes with that. Now, what you're going to discover is once you select those ideal prospects that are within the territory, there's going to be several things that become evident. First thing that's going to happen is you're going to know immediately that it is a defined number of prospects. The territory is not unlimited. Once you define that territory and you develop that profile, both the psychographic and the demographic profile, there's only so many companies that fit the profile. That is a limit. I don't know what n equals, but it is a limited number, unless you expand the territory or widen your net or however you do that. But that's a limited number. Now, here's the thing that you have to realize. Nobody changes vendors on a whim. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, you know what I'm going to do today just for the heck of it, because I don't have near enough to do. I'm going to hire a new printer. Or I'm going to change banks, because change is kind of fun. No, nobody does that. So of those limited number of prospects within that defined territory, you're going to find that those prospects are 3 separate phases, as I call them, of where they are in their willingness to consider alternatives. If you have a prospect who is your ideal prospect, but he's satisfied with his existing relationship, guess what, kids? He ain't moving. So the strategy for him is you have to, if he defines somebody as a perfect, you can't just forget him, because situations within companies are dynamic. The person that's happy today may be mad as anything tomorrow. But if you don't have a presence, if you don't have a piece of that prospect's mind, if you don't have top of the mind awareness, you won't even get a smell of that deal. And here's a tenet that I really believe is important, that everybody intuitively understands. You can't get business you don't know about. You can't. So this is why this has to be so on purpose. This is what we call selling on purpose, selling with intent, meaning it. Not just surviving, but winning, as Doffenbach would say. Now, as you go through this, there is a percentage of people that they're dissatisfied and they're open to a conversation. Now, that may be the 27% of the people who respond to you. But because they are open to a conversation and dissatisfied does not necessarily mean that the pain of change is greater than their dissatisfaction. I didn't say that very well, but you get my point. They're not willing to consider moving just because they're mildly miffed. They're dissatisfied. Here's what happens next, because this is a continuum. There are a certain amount of those people that are actively searching and are by definition sales ready. I would submit to you that where you or your sales staff need to be spending their time is on actively searching, open to a conversation, and sales ready. This, by definition, satisfied, not interested, and dissatisfied, is a marketing functionality. Marketing should be the one who is ongoingly staying in contact with those people. Because what happens if I go into a prospect and I find that Fred is perfectly satisfied and I understand that he's not going to move, how much time am I going to spend with this man? Answer, not much. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he shouldn't be hearing from my company if he fits that profile of somebody that I want as a customer. He needs to be hearing from me, he needs to be engaged, he needs to be knowing why. He needs to know that we offer solutions that I know because he fits that profile that he has. Very important component. Now, here's what happens. I have found it over and over again. And Dale's going to talk about this too. Once you get a picture in your mind of that ideal prospect and you have a psychographic profile, you can craft your message in such a way that you are appealing to their dominant modality, if you wanted to use that word. Why just throw junk out there? I was talking to Steve earlier. I said, you know, some days I get as many as 300 emails. And this is some of the stuff that I've subscribed to, and I don't have time to read all that. But if you say something to me about bow hunting or backpacking, you automatically have my attention because I want to know about that. Tom used an example in one of the meetings some time ago that he subscribes to Cabela's, or it might have been Bass Pro, I can't remember. And you said he doesn't hunt, but he likes to fly fish, and he likes to backpack and be outdoors. Did I get that right? Yeah. And what he doesn't want to have happen is he doesn't want to get information on bow hunting and rifle hunting. I do. He doesn't. I also want to get information on backpacking and all of that. But the message has to be crafted to the prospect that you are profiling. Am I preaching your sermon here? But the point of this, guys, is that once you have a clear picture in your mind of the territory, you have a clear picture in your mind of the prospect, then you can craft that message specifically to that target to get them to engage with you. And even if they are currently satisfied with their existing vendor and not willing to go through the pain of change, you want to engage them with meaningful content. I can't tell you how much junk I get. And it just goes on and on and on and on. I don't have time for it, guys. But what's really important is you understand, and why the first two steps are so important, is you want to craft that message specifically to that target over a long enough period of time that, again, you get that top of the mind awareness. Because here's what happens. In sales, timing is everything. I don't know how to say it any differently. It's just timing is everything. You do have the people that are comfortable. So here's the strategy for those people that are comfortable. Engage and stay engaged. Nurture, 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 but make that a marketing function, not a sales function. Second thing, you're going to find people that are unhappy, but as I said earlier, they're not willing to go through the pain of change. Strategy, nurture, 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 again, a marketing function. And then you're going to have people who are sales ready. There's where your salespeople engage. Not before. Because here's what happens, guys. If a salesperson only engages, you know, if I hear a customer and they say, I'm getting price objections like crazy. You know why that happens? It's because they're engaging too late in the relationship process. If there is trust, if there is capability, understanding of capabilities, you get far less price objections than when you're the last one and they've Googled and they've come up with 5 vendors and all you are is competing on price because they believe the capabilities are all the same. That's why it's so important to do the first steps that we've talked about so far, because understanding buyer discontent is your window of opportunity. Nobody changes vendors on a whim. Okay? Here's what I have found in almost every company that we've worked with in the past. There's 2 types of marketing that's going on in most companies. There's push marketing, which is what you target a prospect and you go after them specifically. And then there's pull marketing. That's the search engine optimization, that's the social media, that's all the things that you're doing to get prospects to find you. What I have found is that, and you can tell me about everything, is that people don't have those 2 in perspective. They either think it's all one or all the other. What I'm suggesting for business-to-business marketing in particular is you have to have both of those strategies and you have to have them fine-tuned. I don't do social media. There are people in this room that are very good at that. I don't do that. That's pull marketing. What I know how to do is push marketing, which is targeting and going after those people with the intentionality of being there and being there and being there, because I get that nurture marketing is the only thing that works in this present selling environment. So what we have found is that once those are in fine-tune, there's also usually lots of processes in place down here when a customer comes in the door. Customer service, product fulfillment, everybody's got that nailed. Here's the big question, guys. What happens in the middle? And for most companies we have worked with, there is no process for handling those people that are interested and may be qualified, but are currently not ready. There's no process. And without a process, you have a problem. If you do something randomly every single time, even when it works, you don't know why. It's not alchemy. You know, if I go out to the website for Mrs. Field's chocolate chip cookies for about $4.95, I can buy her recipe for chocolate chip cookies. And if I follow that recipe, I can turn out world-class chocolate chip cookies all day by following the recipe. Or I can burn 100 pounds of chocolate in my kitchen trying to figure it out. Which is better? I think that every organization has to have a recipe for how we go to market, how we stay engaged with prospects that are qualified, determining what their message is to that target, and being there over a long enough period of time that understanding that situations within companies are dynamic, you stay in front of them until they're ready to make a decision. Here's a very, very important slide. It's maybe the most important slide of today. If someone is going to buy what you sell, and I don't care what you sell, the prospect, the person you're selling to, needs to be two very important things. The first thing, and if you're 0 to 10 here and you're 0 to 10 there, the first thing that they need to be is qualified. Now, for the purposes of this conversation, what I mean by qualified is they have the authority to say yes to you. They can commit their company. They have the resources to pay you, called budget, and they have a need for what you do. Okay? Those three elements are primarily are primarily positional. Either a person is a decision maker or they're not. Either they have budget or they don't. I mean, that's positional. But the second thing that they need to be 0 to 10 is they need to be interested. Interest is about timing. Now, here's where people screw up. Salespeople in particular, can take someone who is extremely well qualified. They're a decision maker. They have budget. They have a need. But they have zero interest in change. They're not interested in changing. They're happy. And so they're here, right? Or they're real excited and they don't have any money. So they're still here. Here's the thought process, what I'm talking about in a strategy. The strategy is for you, first of all, to define who is 8 to 10 qualified. Determine that. Do it psychographically, do it demographically, figure out exactly within that territory who is it that's the ideal prospect, and build a database of those people that fit the profile. Because only a small percentage of them are actively seeking alternatives. And then design a process to systematically, consistently, and persistently stay engaged with those prospects over a long enough period of time. Why would you ever stop nurturing someone who is qualified but currently disinterested once you get the fact that it's a matter of timing? That's called wasted marketing dollars. That's called wasted time. Build a database of people that you believe are qualified. You know they're not interested, they'd be calling you, right? But they're qualified because you've determined it. Then design a process to drip irrigate the crop. Nurture market. Stay there, stay there, stay there, and change it up and provide meaningful content and be there because you get the fact that you have to be in front of the prospect when they're ready to buy. We're always ready to sell, guys. Have you ever had a day you wouldn't take a check? Come on. Really? We're always ready to sell. They're not always ready to buy. That's why it's important to sell on purpose. That's why it's important to engage. And once you get the fact that the only opportunities that salespeople should be spending their time on are people up in this corner, this is not sales, this is marketing. This is marketing down here. I want that to be an automated back office function that marketing engages in and stays up with, and I want salespeople engaged with prospects that are sales ready, because that's the only thing that makes the cash register ring. I don't want to be a professional visitor. And what happens is if you have somebody that's qualified but they're currently disinterested, I don't care how many times you take them to the ball game, you take them out to lunch, you take them to play golf, they're not changing because they like you. No, they don't. They may like you, and that's important that they trust you. I have an insurance agent that I don't particularly like, but I trust him. And there's this huge difference in that because I know that he is going to act in my best interest. Do I want to spend any time playing golf with this guy? He's a jerk. But I trust him. And that's what I think you do with nurture marketing is you build that relationship and you build that trust and you be there and you be there and you be there. Because what I want to engage with the prospect is when they're up there, when they are sales ready. And I'll ask people frequently, salespeople that I coach, I say, how'd you spend your day? Were they sales ready or would you just go out and visit with them? You would be amazed at some high-earning salespeople that spend their time with people that they shouldn't be spending time with. This chart adds clarity, and if any of you want this, I'd be glad to email it to you for your reference, because it's a really important reminder, shall we say, of where you're spending your time. Time is the one thing that you can't get more of. It's the one fixed commodity. And that's why I often ask people, where are you spending your time? And if they're not up in that corner, you're wasting your time. Now, I'm not suggesting you don't have marketing covering that, but where you want to spend your time is there. Here's the...
Alan?
Yes, sir.
A question for you. Could you go back to the graph?
Of course.
Thank you. So clearly, when the phone rings and somebody calls you or your sales rep and says, I'm highly interested.
Sure.
You know that person's highly interested.
That's right.
What can you do in the marketing process to discover interest and infer interest so it's not always about waiting for the phone to ring,
yes,
but your salespeople can identify the highly interested and reach out to them knowing it's going to be a productive sales call?
Yes, and that's a really good point, and it's the question was how can you make certain that you find out where this guy is and that your salespeople are spending their time with them? Is that what you asked me, Tom?
Yeah. How as you market to your prospects?
Yes.
How do you know which of them have reached that point of being sales?
Yes. They want to know, how do you know where they are in this continuum? And I have found that the best way to find out is to ask the questions that will tell me. Once I've determined that I want to spend my time with somebody that has budget, that they are a decision maker, how I determine where they are in their sales cycle. And to really what I want to determine is, as a sales guy, where are you in your buying cycle? So I do that by asking questions. Great, you called me. What got you to call me now, Tom? And he'll say, oh God, our web developer is just horrible and blah, 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 blah. I say, great, well, who other than yourself is going to be engaged in filtering through who it is that you're going to hire? I find out who he is, and then I might ask him, how much budget do you have for this? Or do you have budget already set aside for this? Or is this an unfunded? Now, you can't be a jerk when you ask these questions. You got to smile and you say, so you guys, do you have budget for this? Or is this a next year project? Be conversational. But what I really want to know when I get that call is where they are in their sales process and who's the person am I dealing with. Because if he is a purchasing agent on the third floor of a building with 450 people in the purchasing department, he's probably not going to be the guy that's going to be solely deciding who it is that they pick as a vendor. Okay? Questions help, but what I want to know is where they are in this process. What I have found extremely important in a proactive methodology of going after interested prospects is I take 10 prospective companies and I launch them into an introductory series. The introductory series that I use is a combination of an email, a direct mail piece, a letter, and a voicemail. And we've developed some technology that allows, here's what happens most of the time when you're calling business to business, is you get voicemail. And to be really honest with you, most salespeople leave really lousy voicemails. I'm just calling to touch base, or some equally inane, next, delete. What I'm suggesting is if you think, the way I look at a voicemail is, it's a 20-second commercial. And give this guy a reason to call me back. Now, we've developed some technology that allows me to say, if I could leave the perfect voicemail, what would I say? And we recorded an MP4 file, and then my marketing coordinator calls up, asks for the guy's voicemail, and plays my voice into the prospect, giving this guy a reason to call me back. He's already gotten a letter from me, he's gotten an email, now he gets a voicemail. Then what happens is a week later, I call him on the phone. I, sales guy, call him on the phone. Because what I want to accomplish is I want to find out where he is here. Hey Tom, this is Allen Minster with Frontline Advisors. I wonder if you can help me out for a minute. I don't ask him how he's doing or any of the other junk that telemarketers do. I wonder if you can help me out for a minute. I sent you a letter the other day to introduce myself. Companies hire us because they're having salespeople that just aren't hitting what they should, or maybe they've even got some senior guys that are kind of coasting on a couple of major accounts. Are you guys grappling with any of those issues? Oh, what's he going to say? Yes, no, I hate your guts, and hangs up. I don't care. What have I just found out? Where he is in the sales process. Now I find out that he is qualified, but he's pretty happy with his sales performance. I'm not going to forget him because he fits the profile. Why would I ever stop nurturing somebody that's qualified but currently disinterested? Answer, never. You only get out of our process when one of three things happen. Either you buy, or you die, or you move away. You're just going to keep hearing from me. And I'm going to change it up, which we'll talk about in a minute. Because here's the thing, guys. If I have determined that you're someone I want to do business with, I ain't letting go until you tell me, or you buy, or you go out of business. Okay? Third element. In nurture marketing, there is a fine line between being a pest and being persistent. And we've all got vendors that just are pests. And so what you have to think about, once you get this whole concept of nurture marketing, staying in touch, staying in touch, staying in touch, how do I stay off of the pest category and into the contributive, helping this person's mouth? And that comes down to frequency. How often do I want to contact this individual? I have some customers in the business-to-business market that contact customers once a month. I have customers that contact people once every other month, and some that do it quarterly. But they never let go. They're there, and they're there, and they're there. And so that's one of the challenges I ask people. Because a real live example, though, I had a prospect that I was going after, and they've been a customer for about 8-9 years now, Wellington Environmental. And we emailed them, we called them, and we sent them letters. And finally, I got the call from Tom Wellington. He said, "Let up. You're driving me nuts." So, "Oh, Tom, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I just wanted to let you know we're here to help you." "Well, stop contacting me." Sure enough, took him out. Stopped. Ceased and desist. Well, about a month later, I hired an intern from WashU to come in and work with us. And I'll be darned if she didn't relaunch this guy. He called me on the phone. He says, "I thought I told you to stop." And I said, "Well, yeah, I apologize." He said, "Well, come on in. Things have changed. I really need to talk to you." So you just don't know. I mean, that's why it's so important to stay in touch. But I mean, certainly we would have honored the man's request. But I think it does make a point that sometimes people do a knee-jerk no before they even know what they're saying no to. So the idea of this whole thing of frequency, and you need to fine-tune that for yourself. But once you get the fact that you need to be hearing from you, they need to be hearing, and one of the things that avoids the frustration pest factor is to systematize this ongoing contact. And what I believe is it's important to change it up. Stay on message, but send them an email, send them a voicemail, send them a postcard. One of the companies that I work with is a printing company. They love postcards, and the president of the company says, "It comes opened." But I have found that if you change up the media, if you determine what it is that you're going to, and let's say, for instance, in this particular example, you wanted to contact your prospects every other month. First thing I'd do is call them on the phone after I introduce myself, see where they are. Are they open to a conversation? No. But if they're qualified, I'm going to stay in touch. Invite them to a seminar. I'm going to send them an email. I'm going to call them again on the phone. I'm going to send them a letter. I'm going to send them a press release. But you change it up so you don't get that factor of, boy, I'm so tired of hearing from this guy the same way, which is the media. What are the methods? And you think about it, guys. Unless you're going to knock on their door, there's only a handful of ways to contact any prospect. Call them on the phone, send them a letter, send them a postcard. What I'm suggesting is you have to do it all because you don't know what's going to work. Steve Hagar says that people process things in different modalities. If they are a kinesthetic, they like holding something in their hand. If they're an auditory, a voicemail message works great, as long as you don't say something stupid. If they're a visual, an email they love. So once you get that, why wouldn't I do it all? Do it well, do the pull marketing, but if you're looking at push marketing, look at the frequency, look at the message, look at the target, look at the territory, and finally, change up the media. Here's the real grail of what we want as business owners and managers and successful salespeople. I want marketing doing what they do. Initiating contact, doing their marketing, creating great brochures, creating great websites, knowing that someone out there is going to raise their hand. If marketing's doing a good job, somebody's going to say, "Come and talk to me." I want that to be handed seamlessly off to sales. I want sales to engage with them to determine where they are in the sales cycle and where they rank on that qualified continuum. If they are ready for a conversation, yes, go sell them. If they say no, but they're qualified, even though they've said no, put them back to marketing and continue the drip irrigation nurturing. If they said not now, which there's a whole conversation we've had in the past about marketing to the not nows, stay in touch, stay in touch, stay in touch. Because guys, I'm telling you, nurture marketing is the only thing that will cause alignment between sales and marketing and keep salespeople from spinning their wheels, spending all kinds of time with people that are not qualified nor interested enough to go through the pain of change. That's where you want them spending their time. This causes alignment. This also maximizes your advertising budget. Pardon me. What good does it do to run an ad campaign to get somebody to respond and have it be dead on the vine because nobody stayed in touch? You cannot believe, and so many I had a customer that was a commercial office furniture dealer that spent $50,000 for a video production DVD to go out to business owners to tell them how to manage their moves and how to plan for what kind of office space they needed for their employees. After a year, if they got 10,000 of these, 9,992 of them were still laying in the closet. So all that money that was spent to create them, you just walked in, it's like standing in the shower and tearing up $100 bills. Why are you doing that? You got to have a strategy for taking that excellent collateral material and making that part of a strategy to stay engaged. Get it out of and stop making the salespeople responsible for distribution and make that a marketing function, but make it systematic. This is what causes alignment. When a person is not ready to buy but qualified, telemarketing. Get them engaged. If they're not qualified, cease and desist. How much money and time do you want to spend with somebody that's real excited but can't sign anything? I don't know about you, but I want to spend no time with them. This is where we really want to get with this. Now, once you have this loop around system, nothing falls through the cracks. I'm convinced, guys, that in most companies, you could get wealthy on just stuff that's slipping through the cracks. Nobody meant to. You just get busy doing it, and all of a sudden, because there is no process driving this, things just slip through the cracks. That's where we want to be. So, what can you expect as far as results? These are not my numbers, by the way. What can you expect by taking on this consistent idea of nurture marketing? Forrester research says 50% companies that proactively manage nurture marketing, integrating marketing and sales, and they do the nurture marketing, have 50% more sales-ready leads and at a 33% lower cost. I don't know about you, but that ain't bad. What else should you expect? If we're talking about results, look at this. Nurtured leads produce 47% larger purchases. I don't know where you think, but I think that's pretty important. And by the way, these are not numbers I made up. The source of all those is on there, so I'm glad to share that with you as well. Check this one out. Sales teams follow up. Once a system and process is in place, they follow up on 75% of all nurture marketing leads. Because they know that this isn't being sent on some wild goose chase. This is a nurtured lead. It changes sales cultures. It changes the way your company does business. Because marketing has a function that's respected by sales. Sales knows what marketing is doing for them and looks at them at a value add. And they follow up on those leads because they know it's not going to be a goose chase, a runaround. And nurtured leads increased by 20% the number of opportunities that your salespeople compete for. Think about that, guys. 20% increase. If you're closing, I've always taught salespeople that sales revenues is a combination of two elements. It's a combination of closing ratio, which means how good are you when you're in front of the prospect? Can you qualify? Can you present your product? Can you handle questions? Can you close the business? Closing ratio. Times the number of selling opportunities that you're engaged in. You can be a 100% closer, and if you're not talking to enough people, you're still going to have a tough time making your numbers. Because sales is now and always will be a numbers game. People that talk to them, I'm not talking about people that say stupid, but think about that. If you had your salespeople engaged in 20% more leads, much more would they sell? Even if their closing ratio remained the same. This is a huge point and a whole really good payoff for nurture marketing. So here's the basics. Once you have gone through the step of determining the territory, figuring out who the target is, who the prospect is, determining what the message is to that prospect within that territory, determining what the frequency is of connecting and staying connected with those people, and we suggest you flow chart this out. I mean, really understand, make this part of your corporate culture. Then we want to know, this then becomes a process. And again, process means it is replicatable. How can you ever implement best practices if every one of your salesperson does something different? And if you have 5 salespeople, you have 5 brands going to market. Promise. You got to have consistency, because if you, one of the foundations of best practices is you can't change something that you don't know is or is not working. And if you don't have a process, even if it works, you don't know why. I don't know. It's worked out. Got to get smarter than that. Process driven, which means you have to have a process. Secondly, it needs to be persistent. It can't go stops, starts, and how many times in companies do people start something and 90 days later they're not even doing that? It has to be persistent. It also has to be consistent. Not just persistently, stay in touch, but it needs to be consistently applied so you don't get away from all those different brands going to market. And finally, it really needs to be a long-term commitment. Nurture marketing is not just a decision that we're going to try this. This may be a commitment to 3 or 4 years, depending upon how long your buying cycle is. One of my customers is a mid-size accounting firm here in St. Louis, UHY. And I talked to Larry Portions, who's the managing partner, and I says, how long is your life cycle of a customer? And he said, well, people usually stay with an accounting firm 10 years. I said, okay, that's good. I said, how much revenue per year do you typically extract from a person? And he says, well, we're really looking for a customer that spends between $3,000 and $5,000 a year with us. Well, guys, I'm no math major, but if a person generates $3,000 to $5,000, let's say $5,000 a year, and you keep them 10 years, that's a $50,000 opportunity. And to not get a chance to even compete for that. And I firmly believe that the biggest cost in almost every company is not heat, light, phones, direct and indirect employee expense, but the cost of missed opportunity. It's a deal you don't get because you don't even know about it. Thank you. You don't know. So what's really important to understand is that this is a commitment. This is a decision. This is how we do business. This is how we go to market. Otherwise, as Mark Twain said, my favorite line of Mark Twain, when you need a friend, it's too late to make one. When you need a customer, it's too late to go find one. When you understand nurture marketing, you understand that you have to decide systematically who it is that you want to do business with. Make a long-term commitment to engaging with that prospect persistently and consistently, because if you don't, missed opportunity will continue to be the biggest expense in your company. I promise it will. Nobody wants to be the lonely guy. I thank you for your time, and I'll open up to questions.